In Zaporizhzhia direction, a failed attack exposed the true state of Russian units, with elite VDV branding not being able to mask inadequate planning and logistics. As Russian paratroopers saw what awaited them with such a plan, many decided just to surrender, to avoid a certain death, only to immediately become priority targets for their own drone units that received the command to chase and eliminate all deserters. RFU News media outlet says, it is noted that Russian VDV forces were redeployed to the Zaporizhzhia front to pin Ukrainian defenses in Zaporizhzhia as part of a combined operation. The hope was that this would split Ukrainian attention in the south, while another operational grouping would try to outflank Ukraine's defense lines from the east and force penetration in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Many Russians joined the VDV forces, believing they would be treated as elite warriors, trained, equipped, and celebrated. The reality is far more different from what was portrayed. Paratroopers were thrown into the meat grinder in sequential waves, watching comrades engulfed by explosions as their own turn soon approached. Rather than a coordinated, overwhelming thrust, units were fed into attritional assaults by only several vehicles at a time, with little hope of success and zero plans to evacuate potential survivors. The psychological effect was catastrophic for the VDV recruits, as elite status evaporated into a sense of being expendable. RFU News says, faced with annihilation, a growing number of Russian soldiers chose surrender over certain death. Such possibility gave the Russian soldiers a rational survival choice, if only they had not been spotted by their own comrades. In one such case, 2 Russian FPV drones attacked the group, shockingly ignoring the Ukrainians but focusing on the Russian soldier who had surrendered, with the only goal to punish their own for choosing to live. This ruthless Russian field response is intended to deter deserters by a brutal order. When Russian reconnaissance identifies their own troops moving to surrender, Russian FPV drones and artillery units are ready to act and strike the surrendering soldiers. Footage from Stepnohirsk shows another VDV soldier holding his arms up in surrender, but then quickly turning around and pleading with the approaching Russian kamikaze drone, trying not to kill him, to no avail. If the Russian command allows surrenders, discipline will collapse further. Desertion and refusal will spread, leading to uncontrollable manpower losses. To prevent this, the officers try to re-establish deterrence through public and private punishment, but at a steep cost. Ordered executions of surrendering soldiers may slow the spread of capitulation, but they also confirm to recruits that the officers care little for their survival. Potential volunteers or contract recruits watching these developments are also less likely to sign up, creating longer-term recruitment and readiness problems for any army already strained by huge losses. RFU News reports. It is noted that what began as a plan to use VDV as a fix for a stalled offensive has become a symbol of the systemic problems of the Russian army. Elite units are treated as expendable, led by a command that is willing to kill its own to slow down the collapse and avoid getting punished themselves by those higher in the hierarchy. The surge in surrenders and desertions is a significant indicator that cannot be ignored. When soldiers chose captivity over direct orders, the war of attrition is destroying the loyalty that the Kremlin still needs to sustain its campaign. For many Russian conscripts, the illusion of patriotic duty has collapsed, resulting in the latest mass shootings as it was replaced by fear, despair, and an overwhelming urge to escape at any cost, any possibility of being involved in the war. Its grim reality is hardly confined to the front lines, as it is tearing through Russian society, the army barracks and the minds of the soldiers that can be sent to fight it, according to Euromaidan Press media outlet. In the latest incident, symbolizing this internal breakdown, a Russian conscript opened fire on his fellow soldiers at a military unit in Moscow region, killing 2 and wounding another before turning the gun on himself. The shooting occurred in the training center of an anti-aircraft brigade for newly drafted soldiers. While the Russian army claims motive remains unclear, such cases are no longer rare. Shootings, self-killings, and mental breakdowns among newly drafted troops are increasingly common, reflecting a force that is psychologically cracking under the weight of the war. Russian authorities blame isolated stress incidents, yet reports from soldiers and relatives tell a different story of bullying, deprivation, and hopelessness. Despite symbolic claims and censorship, the young conscripts are not blind. They see footage from the front, learn from returning soldiers, and know what awaits them in Ukraine. Many try to flee, but harsh new laws criminalize even online searches for information deemed extremist, a label that conveniently excludes criticism of the war. Euromaidan Press says, those who do end up deployed often face harsh conditions with equipment shortages that have reached absurd levels. Soldiers are sent to the front without or with cheap, barely protective vests and plastic helmets, while boots, gloves, and basic gear are often missing. A shocking video shows a Russian soldier gleefully looting gear from his fallen comrades, filming himself as he pulls a helmet and vest off a corpse and sarcastically thanks the dead for their contribution. His cynicism hides desperation. He had been sent into battle without protection and was grateful to find it on the dead. This scene illustrates how corruption and neglect in the Russian military have turned even scavenging into survival. The shortages go far beyond personal gear, as a video released by Ukraine's 225th Assault Regiment shows German detonators from the World War II era found in a captured Russian ammunition depot. These relics of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact between the Soviet Union and Germany, marked with typical German insignia of that time, are a bitter irony for a regime that claims to be fighting fascism in Ukraine. Euromaidan Press reports. They also expose the staggering depletion of Russian munitions reserves, as Russia is scraping century-old stockpiles to keep the war machine running. Even those conscripts who have not yet been sent to Ukraine are already feeling the danger. Officially, Russian conscripts cannot be deployed to active combat, but that rule has been quietly bent and broken. Thousands are stationed along the border regions, Belgorod, Bryansk, and Kursk, where they come under drone and artillery fire with Ukrainian forces almost daily. The fear of another Ukrainian incursion like the one in Kursk last summer that led to hundreds of captured and missing Russian conscripts haunts many. Lastly, large numbers are coerced into signing so-called volunteer contracts, often under threat of punishment and bullying for the remainder of their conscription tour, with this single signature allowing the Russian military to send them straight to the front instead. Euromaidan Press says, despite the Russian government's efforts to hide the scale of the disaster, the truth is seeping through. Millions of Russians now know someone directly affected, a dead friend, a missing son, or a wounded brother. And with that knowledge comes fear and quiet rage, as the Russian state's myth of the time of heroes is unraveling, replaced by a grim awareness that soldiers are being thrown into a meat grinder. With no prospects of escaping the war, for many conscripts, this means either a desperate attempt to hurt themselves or go to prison at home, or become a nameless victim in the meaningless territorial gains statistics of their commanders. In these circumstances, desertion is also increasing in the Russian army.